I have done a couple of interviews prior to this one, Cern. You might have seen the one I did with Boomer Mama. You might have seen the one I did with Larry Goldberg, and both of them people really seem to like. So we thought, hey, it might be time to do some additional person from the community. And I took a vote, and you
And I
came
didn't
in.
win.
You came in among the top two. So, out of all my co-hosts, you came
I
in.
was probably in the top 50.
No, you came in the top two. But we won't bother to mention who was in first. But he might, who knows, the person who came in that number one slot might eventually do this adventure as well. Anyway, listen, Cern, I always start off with this question. I did give you time to think about it because I hate empty spaces where nobody's saying anything. So I begin with this question because there have been some studies done that what people think they're going to be, what they answer the question when they were 12 years old. Somebody says, "What are you going to be when you grow up?" That is the most accurate predictor of what actually turns out to be the case. So the first question I have for you today is, can you recall, do you remember what it was? Would you have said to somebody if they'd asked you when you're 12 what you want to be when you grow up?
Yeah, in my case, it was not an accurate predictor. I wanted to be the world's best runner.
The world's best runner.
Yeah. And I pursued that dream for about 10, 12, maybe 15 years in total,
Uh-huh.
and had some success at it, but that's not what I'm doing today.
Certainly not what you're doing today. However, it was a predictor. You did actually pursue it into even adulthood. So that wasn't too bad. Was there any second place, second other things that might have been on that list if you'd been asked?
I wish I could remember.
Uh-huh.
But I think I was pretty focused on that. So I
On the
certainly
running.
was, certainly from age 15 through about 22.
Hmm.
But even before 15, I was already running and competing, but started really training at age 15.
Okay.
And that was a big focus of my life for those years.
And
Yeah.
this is long distances, short distances, barriers in the way, like hurdles and things, are just.
Well, living in Canada at the time, cross-country running was kind of my interest.
I see.
And actually, I have a few photos to share with you if you're interested in seeing them. But yeah, okay. So let's do that.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
I'm sure you
Well,
you
because
have some other
CERN,
questions.
obviously, if it's your autobiography, we knew that we were going to get charts, graphs,
Exactly.
photos. It has to happen. Yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. And by the way, I've traced the origin of my interest in spreadsheets, so we can discuss that as well.
I see.
But first of all, in order to answer your question, let me just take a step back. I was born in a little tiny country in the South Pacific, New Zealand.
Yes, yes.
And if you look at the Earth and just from the right angle, New Zealand's about the only thing that you can see.
Oh, interesting.
Here it is down here in the lower left.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
This is Australia coming into view, I'd imagine a little bit over here, Antarctica perhaps, but otherwise you don't really see too much of anything other than the Pacific Ocean.
Isn't that wild?
I would imagine a few aliens have, flown by the planet and said, "Oh, nothing's going on there. It's just ocean."
Yeah, that's right. So when you were in New Zealand, you were in New Zealand for what years?
I was born there and I left there when I was 10 years old.
Oh, so you have like memories of New Zealand.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And by the way, this is how the world is supposed to look.
Right, right.
New Zealand's on the top.
I
Here we are
see.
here. Okay. And actually, I was born at the southern end of the South Island, so at the very tippy top here, or on a normal map at the bottom.
Right, right, right.
Fairly remote place.
Very remote.
Not too many other places in the world that are more southerly than here, except perhaps southern Argentina and Chile, and of course in Antarctica.
Right, right, right. Yeah. So do you think that being born in a place that remote and surrounded by ocean had any impact on who you are today?
That's a good question. I mean, it definitely had an impact on me. Does it define me? I don't think so, but I think being born in New Zealand and living there, I think gives me perhaps a bit more of a worldly view than if you were just born and live in the same country your whole life.
Right, right.
Um, I remember being extremely excited to move to Canada when I was 10 years old.
Hmm.
And that really seemed to have sort of set something off in me that I suddenly became a motivated student.
Oh,
When I was in New Zealand, I was a very shy kid, didn't particularly do that well in school, didn't really have a whole lot of friends.
hmm.
And then when I came to Canada, it was the exact opposite.
Wow.
So I really came out of my shell with that move. And so I'm not sure what was so exciting about the idea of moving to Canada at age 10, but it really changed my life.
So, all right. So you were shy, and now there was how many kids would there have been? As it was it a fairly large little community there, or
In New Zealand,
yeah,
the town I lived in, I'm not sure what the population was. It wasn't that big. And here's one of the first photos that I know of me. I was
I see.
pretty cute back then.
Not bad, not bad. Yeah.
Not bad. Yeah, the diaper might have needed changing, but otherwise looking pretty good. Yeah, even at this point, I guess I was such a good runner that my parents had to tie me up to make sure.
That's undoubtedly true.
Yeah.
Uh,
Um, and then I'll just share these with you. This is kind of fun on a couple different levels. So my mom used to make birthday cakes for us.
oh, okay.
And I think this is a bit of a predictor because my first birthday, I had a bear cake.
Uh-huh.
So I guess that meant that I would be involved in the stock market
Stock
at some
market.
point.
That's right. That must be it. 100%.
Yeah. And then you'll see a theme in all these photos. I'm holding a car.
Well, yeah. Okay, we do know, of course, that cars are the number one little boy toy,
Yes.
but nobody knows what number two is. Do you know what number two is?
No.
Flashlights.
Interesting.
Yep, yep. Or lights, little things, anything with a light.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, we didn't have lights back then in those years, but we had toy cars, Matchbox cars. And then here's my second birthday. I wanted a train cake, and then you can see I'm holding another car.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Looking pretty spiffy with my hair back. And then by the time I got to age 3, my parents gave up on my hair.
And later
This
you
is
gave up on your hair.
well, at that point I think they did because I wasn't, yeah, I wasn't certainly wasn't doing anything. But then I was into houses. I got a house cake,
Ah, yeah, yeah.
and that persisted through age 4 as well.
Hmm.
But you can see here I've got 3 cars now. I'm really moving up in the world.
Yeah.
This is a Volkswagen van, and so my parents must have known that if you have a Volkswagen van, it's going to break down a lot. So there's a tow truck that was part of this as well. It's the last one in line there. So yeah, those were some pretty good years. I asked my mom what kind of birthday cake I wanted, and that's what she made me.
You make it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right. So
Um, so I think I was trying to go back and answer your question.
which one?
Um, but here's a beautiful scene from New Zealand, family trip in the mountains.
Okay.
I'm the youngest there in the red shirt, and New Zealand is a beautiful place to hike. And I think that, my love of mountains
Right.
probably came from these family experiences.
And you guys spent a lot of time going on mountain excursions?
Um, it was kind of hard not to because where we lived was surrounded by mountains.
I
So
see. Okay.
you pretty much went anywhere, there would be mountains involved. Yeah. Yeah. And then, so back to your question. So when I was younger, this is a photo from high school,
Hmm. Hmm.
winning I think it was a 3,000-meter race in high school. And so I had a lot of success in running.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then that also parlayed to some national success. So when I was 18 years old, actually, I think I may have just turned 19, I won the Canadian Junior National Cross Country Championships.
Okay.
And the cool thing about that, actually, here's the only photo I have of the race. This was on a course at UBC in Vancouver on
Hmm.
a field, and there was a number of laps. This is going into the last lap, and so I was leading that, and throughout that last lap, I pulled away from these guys and won the race.
Nice.
In my recollection, I won by a country mile. And I just happened to see the race results today. The guy that was in second was 4 seconds behind me, so I really
Four
wasn't that
seconds.
far ahead.
Yeah, yeah.
But in my memory, all these years, I thought I beat him by, by a minute or something.
Right, right. Interesting. All right. Yeah.
And then just to finish this out, so then as I got a little bit older, went to college in the U.S. on a track and field scholarship. And then when I graduated, came back and I still was running. This is actually a photo from the Canadian Senior Track Championships. And the guy there in the photo in the blue, the tall guy, he was the best runner in Canada.
Hmm, hmm.
And you can see there he was checking me out to see if I was going to be competition for him. And there's just an action shot from the race.
Yeah, yeah. So what happened in that race?
Wasn't a great race for me. I think I finished eighth.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
And was that the end of your career? You finished eighth and you said that's it.
Kept going for a few more years. Certainly enjoyed running.
Uh-huh.
It was funny today. I uncovered my old training journal, and this predates my life commitment to spreadsheets.
There you go.
Right. So every page in here is a month that shows all my running activity.
Uh-huh.
It starts in April of 1988. So I was 18 years old, actually 17 back then. And this is kind of funny. It goes for 118 months. Sorry, 114 months. And it ends in 1997. And on September 1st, 1997, Randy, do you remember what happened on that day?
No.
When I say it, you'll say, "Oh yeah."
No.
Somebody died in a car accident.
Oh, is that that was the singer?
No, Princess Diana.
Oh, Princess Diana. Oh, interesting.
And it's kind of funny because I wrote at the top of the page, Princess Diana dies.
Huh.
And that month was when I stopped keeping track of my running activity.
It just hit you so hard.
I lost all motivation after
Lost
her
all
death.
motivation after she was gone. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, 10 years later, I transferred my exercise activity to a spreadsheet, but this is the precursor to my
Your
spreadsheets.
spreadsheet. I see. We many of us were transferring written stuff to spreadsheets during those years.
That's right. Yeah. I'm surprised that I haven't transferred this yet to a spreadsheet. I guess that's a
You
future
should.
project.
Yeah, of
Yeah.
course.
Perhaps Optimus can do it for me sometime.
There you go. That'd be a great way to take care of it.
Yep.
Okay. So you were born with the last name Basher.
Hmm.
We've talked about this a little bit on my show when I first met you, but many people wouldn't have seen that. So we're complete in this biography. Is there any, I mean, that's not a name. I mean, my name Kirk, I mean, it's fairly, it's not like Jones, but it's fairly common. But Basher, I've never known another Basher ever. So is there any history to Basher?
Well, there is. My father actually did some work on a family tree one time during a sabbatical that he had, and he traced our family back to, I think, the 1500s, maybe even earlier, to Southwest England.
Okay.
And there's a place in England called Land's End,
Yeah.
and there's an area there called Lizard Point.
Lizard.
And our Lizard Point, yeah, and our family seems to sort of emanate from that area generally. And when you go to the cemeteries, you see different names on tombstones. There's Bashar with an A,
Mm.
Bashir, Bashire. There's different versions of spelling of our name. So probably Bashire maybe was the original name. I'm not sure.
Hmm, hmm. And was there any, like one of my family names is Plummer, which actually in England it was Plumer with one M, and
Hmm.
they were makers of quill pens. Was there any kind of a derivation for the name Basher
Not that I'm aware of.
that you could find? Okay, all right.
Yeah. I mean, I wish I could say we came from a long line of, boxers or something like that, but I don't think so.
Okay, then as unusual as your last name is, your first name, of course, is almost singular. I don't know if
Hmm.
there's any other Cerns in the world. If you've tracked it down, do you know if there's anybody else going by Cern?
I haven't come across another person yet.
Right.
Surely there has to be somebody out there.
But don't call me Shirley.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah. So my name actually comes from the Danish name Soren. And my parents were traveling in Europe in the 1960s, and they met a guy that wrote this book.
Okay.
And his first name was Soren, Soren.
Which is a fairly common name, I think, in that part of the
It
world.
is.
Yes.
It is. And it's kind of interesting because this little book is for teenagers that might want to challenge authority.
I see. Okay.
The first chapter in this book is titled "All Grown-ups Are Paper Tigers," and it goes from there. Um, so I guess kind of fitting.
Yeah.
That yeah. But in addition to that story, in high school, my best friend was a big blonde Danish guy by the name of Soren.
Oh, interesting.
And so I had an amazing high school experience because I was a pretty nerdy, scrawny kid,
Okay.
and I would have been picked on if it wasn't for Soren being the toughest guy in the school. I had a free pass in high school, Randy. No one touched me.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bet you I probably could have topped you for being scrawny, but at least I was tall. I wasn't, I guess you're probably at least as tall as I. How tall are you?
I'm about 5'11".
5'11", yeah, so you're taller than me. I was 5'10", about 115 when I graduated from high school.
Okay. My running weight was about 130, 135.
Okay, so you were a little bigger than I was for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So you were a runner, you were a better student, you were scrawny, and so you had a big friend. But you were also became more outgoing, so you were more fun to be around in high school.
I don't know about that, but I was certainly very focused on running, and I had a lot of success through high school. My last year of high school was when I really started to improve as a runner,
Okay,
and then into the first year of college, and that was when I won the Canadian Junior
right,
Cross Country Championship.
right.
Yeah. And the
Okay,
next year, I got to compete in the World Championships. I was invited to Japan for a race there. Spent a few weeks in Switzerland in the summertime running, so I had a lot of success. And then from there, I went to college in the U.S.
hmm At
at the University of Alabama.
University of Alabama.
Yeah,
Right. You'll have a bunch of fans probably right on this show saying, go Bama.
roll tide, roll tide, roll. Yeah, that was a good experience. Obviously, moving from Canada, moving to the deep South was an interesting cultural experience, but yet for me, I was more a part of this international track and field team.
Okay.
And they had runners from Venezuela and Africa. They had throwers from Iceland. It was a really amazing experience.
Yeah. So you got really first of all, you were already somebody who'd had international experience by
Mm.
just your moves, but then you're thrown into this international group of runners and field folks. So you even expanded your horizons more.
That's right. And it was interesting too, because in my first year of college in Canada, I was going to the engineering school and I kind of followed in my brother's footsteps. Didn't really think too much about what I wanted to do in the future, but he was interested in engineering and that's where he was. And so I just did what he did.
Mhm.
That was the year that I had a lot of success in running. And so I missed a lot of classes and I had a really terrible first year of college. The
Mm,
experience was horrible.
mm.
And none of my professors could have cared that I was off running and representing the country. They didn't care about that at all. There was no special dispensation for me because I missed, weeks and weeks of classes. So I took the opportunity to transfer into the business school when I went to Alabama,
Mm.
and I got a degree in finance.
Oh, no kidding. Yes.
Yeah. And so it was also really neat because one of my professors in the last semester, he had his CFA designation.
Mhm.
And so it sort of came down to the idea of going to graduate school or pursuing the CFA program, and that's what I did.
Got it. Okay. So that's what your career was kind of made for you in your last semester of undergrad.
Yeah, and it was even more fun because that last semester I'd actually finished all my coursework, but I wanted to stick around and run another season of track. And so I took a graduate level finance course,
Mm,
a course in futures, options, and speculative markets,
I see.
right? And so um, I was the only undergrad in the graduate class. All the graduate students were overworked and stressed out. And here I was rolling up to class every day, perfectly prepared. And basically, I became the teacher's pet because I knew the answers to everything, right? Because I had time to study. Every other kid in that class hated me, right? But it was a great experience for me.
Okay. Oh, yes, that sounds great. So, all right. So let's move back just a little bit in time. You were another one of the theories of life. There's a lot of life's theories, and one of those has to do with the entrepreneurial types, which you apparently are, at least to some degree, starting your own finance or your own independent business. They There's a theory that most entrepreneurs are B students. So I know that you said you were a lousy student for a while, then a better student, and a lousy student your first year. Anyway, would the B student thing apply? Does that one work?
Um, I was generally an A student, not all A's. Biology was kind of a nemesis for me, one of my least favorite subjects. But chemistry and physics were great.
Uh-huh.
Math class and so on. English, I guess I wasn't as interested in English, didn't do as well in that class. But I was generally a pretty good student.
Mhm.
Um, Generally found it fairly easy. And so I guess, I had time to run and really pursue that.
Right.
And first, I don't know, I still can't really explain why running was so important to me.
Mhm.
But there was a pivotal moment in my life where, so I have two older brothers,
Right.
and the brother that's 2 years older than me was very competitive and very good at everything he did. Right. And so for me to follow in his footsteps kind of was a smart move.
Hmm.
But I would keep trying to compete with him in different sports,
Hmm.
and he would crush me in everything that we did. Absolutely crush me because he was so good
And older.
and older, a couple of years older, which makes all the difference when you're growing up.
Absolutely.
There was one day I think I was probably, I don't know, maybe 14 years old. And I challenged him to a race behind our house up this long hill that was probably about half a mile. And make a long story short, I beat him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to his credit, instead of making up some excuse as to why he lost, there and then on that spot, he said, "Well, sir, that was impressive. You must be a really good runner because you
Wow.
destroyed me."
Yeah.
He gave me kind of key encouragement at that moment.
Yeah.
And so I think something clicked in my head. It's like, oh my gosh, if I can beat my brother at this, then I must be good at it.
And or what they say about each additional child. They have these birth order book ideas too, and they say that the second child looks for niches that the first child is not already enjoying, and so they the first child tends to be good at everything. The second child comes along and says, "Well, but he's not good at art, so I'll be an artist." Third child comes along and goes, "What's left for me and for you?" Apparently running to finish that birth order idea. Most of the time, though, it's a comedian. And of course, everybody that watches this show knows that you at least have a comedic flair. I don't know if you could do stand up, but we know that you do have, let's call it, you're amused easily and
Mm.
like to amuse. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know where that comes from. I think my dad had a pretty good sense of humor, and he and I used to joke around a lot. But otherwise, I think it's just kind of the way I see the world. I just, I don't take things too seriously.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, all right. So you're now, let's go back to the transition so in high school, though, were there other hobbies or was running it? Were you just like run, 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 run and didn't really leave much time for chess club or other kinds of hobbies?
Yeah, running is kind of an all-encompassing sport. Maybe not as much as swimming is, where you have to get up at, 5 o'clock in the morning every day.
Right.
But you do spend quite a bit of time training and doing different things when you're a runner. And so that was pretty much it. And I think my parents were probably pretty happy about that because they didn't they didn't really have to spend too much time, driving me around all the different things. Luckily for them, there were some other people in my neighborhood that were runners as well, and so I went with them. Um, but yeah, no, that was my focus, certainly in high school. Yeah. In junior high, I was in the band. I played trumpet.
Mhm.
I enjoyed that. Don't know how good I was, but I certainly enjoyed it.
So you were as a runner, this was before earphones, right? Did they have headphones then?
Yeah.
So when you're running back in those days, you are running in your own head. I mean, you get, especially cross country, you're getting hours and hours of time alone, time to think, time to contemplate. So you must have gotten very, very good at being happy just being with yourself.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Randy. The Sony Walkman was around, and I did have one of those,
Mm-hmm.
but I never wore that when I was running.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I actually did enjoy kind of being out there alone, lost in my own mind.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Let's put those words in a little different order. That's- Okay. Um, all right. Yeah. So, and that's a, by the way, I think it's a great skill set is being able to be alone with yourself. I
mm,
think in particular, if you're going to be in some kind of a finance or accounting world where you need to spend that kind of concentrated and focused time without any kind of interruptions. Does that make sense?
Definitely for me. And then also, I think it's consistent with sort of what I did with my life, outside of work.
Hmm.
After I hung up my running shoes, I kind of sort of had a career, not a career, but I spent some time climbing mountains, and I really focused on that for quite a while. And then I found cycling, which is what I do now.
So
And
if
I
you go
think
to, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, finish.
I was just going to say both of those activities I think are very much like running, where you're in your own mind.
Right,
Yeah.
right. All right, that's a great place to end part one. I'm going to break this into three parts. So, CERN, if you don't mind, we're going to do a conclusion here of part one, where you're going from being a runner to being a mountain climber. I think that will be fascinating. I have all kinds of questions about your mountain climbing years, and maybe you'll have a picture or two for us as well.
I do.
I bet you do. All right, so well, CERN and I have already identified that we have multiple things in common. One of those is we both played trumpet, but what we didn't have in common was my race was the 100 yards. I never liked distance. In fact, I've never completed a mile actually running,
Well,
maybe crawling, but never running. but anyway, so that would put us on opposite ends of that particular sport. But when we ended our last conversation, and by the way, folks, you may want to go back and check out part one because it was a ton of fun. We got to the place in your life where you're in your 20s, you decide to hang up your running shoes where you had actually had quite a bit of success, won some national events, and traveled internationally as a result, doing cross country. But then you gave that up, and how did you end up well, you were born in New Zealand, so I can imagine mountain climbing might have been an obvious thing, or was it? Was it something that just came along?
well, I think the more obvious thing was where I was growing up then in Canada, which was in Calgary,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
um,
Yes.
right next to the Rocky Mountains.
Right. Right.
And so where we lived, we had a beautiful view of the Rockies. On a clear day, you could see, probably, 50 different peaks in the distance.
Wow.
Right? They sit up beautifully, particularly in the wintertime when they have snow on them, they look even higher and closer.
Yeah.
And so I think the mountains were always calling. They were always there. And of course, as a kid, I grew up skiing.
Hmm.
And then in the summertime, whether it's mountain biking or just hiking and climbing, that was a lot of fun. Yeah.
All right. So the mountains were calling you. You finished up your running career. You probably were, was it kind of a thing of where you decided to do mountains and gave up cycling? I mean, I'm sorry, running, or was it more a case of you gave up running and were like, hey, I need a sport?
I'm not really sure how that evolved. I know that my father was very much into hiking and just being in the mountains. That was very much who he was. And I enjoyed spending a lot of time with my dad, and so that was one way I think for us to do things together.
Mhm, mhm. Okay.
And we ended up having actually a pretty amazing experience here. I'll just share with you some photos here. This is from the previous
Right.
show. Um, After my mountain climbing period was over, I became a cyclist. So this slides out of order, but this is me on 𝐄𝐦𝐚𝐢𝐥 in Maui,
Oh, okay.
riding above the clouds.
Yes.
This
And
is from
once again, we were on opposite sides of Haleakala. You were riding uphill on
yeah.
Haleakala, and I was taking the downhill. My travels were much easier than yours.
Well, the downhill part's fun too. That's the benefit of riding uphill. Yeah, yeah. So anyway, so yeah, I went through a phase where I really enjoyed mountain climbing, and most of the mountain climbing I did was not very technical, although in the later years I was starting to get more focused on that.
Okay.
And this image actually was taken on a mountain in Ecuador.
Hmm.
And this actually is the day that I pretty much decided that I was not going to become a mountain climber, that I wasn't going to pursue it. And it's not because of this photo where I'm on my back. This is actually training where you're trying to learn how to self-arrest.
Oh, I see. Okay. Okay.
So this was planned and this was okay. I wasn't plummeting to my death here. But on this location, a big chunk of the mountain, big chunk of ice, came down pretty close to us.
Wow.
And I kind of decided that I didn't really want to risk my life in that way.
I see. Yeah.
But I was definitely heading towards, objectives like climbing Everest,
Yeah. Oh, okay.
right? And that would have been a psychological step from where I was going.
Right. Right.
So just to take a step backwards, so this is a photo from Nepal, and this is probably one of the best sort of hiking experiences I've ever had. Nepal is such a magical place, and it's the home, of course, to most of the world's biggest mountains.
Right.
On that trip, I got to meet a mountaineering legend, Reinhold Messner.
Hmm.
I believe he's the first guy to climb Everest without oxygen.
Oh,
That's
interesting.
him there on the left. And so that was pretty amazing. I happened to be there kind of at I think it was some anniversary of Edmund Hillary climbing Everest.
Oh,
I forget what, the 80th anniversary or something like that. And so not only did I get to meet Reinhold Messner, who was there doing a film, but I got to meet Edmund Hillary's son here in gray. This is Peter Hillary. And this is taken in front of Mount Everest Base Camp. You can see some of the tents back behind us here.
hmm.
And this is the 𝐒𝐚𝐿𝐴 Icefall here on the right. So I've always enjoyed, being in these high mountains. This is like 18,000 feet. This is pretty high right here.
Right.
It's hard to breathe. And of course, that's just base camp for Everest, which goes up to about 29,000 feet.
So you made the Everest base camp, but you didn't challenge the summit.
No, not on that trip, but that certainly would have been, maybe the thing to come back and try the next year.
Right.
But I decided not to pursue that path. Yeah, and of course, also while I was here, there was a climber that died on the mountain, and I got to see the helicopter carrying his body away.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Now,
there's a lot of reminders when you're there about how dangerous this place is.
now they just litter the side of the path, right? You just pass them on your way up and back. And I was reading some article about that just yesterday.
Yeah, there are some people frozen in place, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So this is kind of, it was a great experience, a great trek, and so on. Um, Also, this is taken in Patagonia. This is also one of the world's great mountainous places.
Hmm.
Stunning place just to go hiking. This is inside a hole in the ice that's formed by wind. So this, just I really enjoyed my time in the mountains. It's there's so many incredible places to experience. Um, but the key thing I think for me was spending time with my dad.
Sure.
And my father had a love for mountains that I haven't really seen in anybody else that I know really well. But this is a trip that we did to Kilimanjaro in Africa. And he was all smiles the whole time. At that point, I think he was 71. And this is actually taken from the crater inside Kilimanjaro near the top.
Hmm.
This is about 18,000 feet up.
Hmm.
And the snow in the crater, I actually wrote a post kind of about this on X recently, but the snow here, there's no rivers coming off the top of Kilimanjaro. The ice and the snow go from solid to water vapor,
Right.
right? It doesn't melt first, it just turns
Right.
into the vapor. It's a
Just
bit like
evaporate.
dry ice in
Just
that
evaporate.
regard.
Yeah.
It just evaporates.
Yeah.
Yeah. But this ice here was very crunchy. It was like this really hard little tiny, almost like trees.
Mm.
They look like little trees, but they were very, very hard. And so walking on here was kind of made an interesting sound. This is me next to one of the glaciers inside the crater,
Mm.
which I think now is almost nearly melted away.
Mm.
This was back in 2007, so almost 20 years ago.
Right.
These are all my footprints walking around the crater
I see.
inside. I was just amazed at how beautiful the place was, and I was taking photos from every different angle I could think of. Um, and here we are reaching the summit rim. There's a rim around the crater, and this is kind of getting to the high point. This is me here in the middle, and my dad here in the left. We spend a night actually down sleeping in this crater at
Mm.
about 18,000 feet. It was probably the worst night of sleep in my entire life. It was not restful. There's hardly any oxygen. You just feel like you're just gasping for air. It's pretty rough. So I was quite happy the next day to be up and walking and climbing again. My dad making the summit. There's an ash pit in the middle of the crater. And the previous day I walked up there, and these are my footprints and my guide's footprints going up there.
Hmm.
So it's just an incredible experience. And here we are at the top. So we shared a love of the mountains, and that was probably one of the reasons that was such a big thing for me.
Sure.
The CFA Society, which is a global organization, recognized me as their most inspiring member
Most inspiring member. Wow.
in 2007 because of this Kilimanjaro trip.
I see.
So that was kind of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. We did the trip actually to raise some money for my oldest son, who was born with a genetic condition called, at the time, 22q13 deletion syndrome.
Is there going to be a
It's
test? I'm not going to be able to remember that.
it's a very rare genetic condition that causes an absence of genetic material in this 22nd chromosome.
Okay.
So at the time that he was diagnosed, when he was 5, he was one of just a handful of people in the world with this condition.
Wow.
And so we did this trip to raise money for the foundation. Here's the banner here, 22q13 Deletion Foundation.
Got
The
it.
name has now since been changed. It's called Phelan-McDermid syndrome now.
Okay.
Um, anyway, that gave us extra motivation to reach the summit.
Yeah. Yeah. And so he's an adult now, I guess.
He is. He's now 25 years old. Yeah.
Okay. And is this tremendously debilitating, or is it a?
It affects people in different ways. My son is on the more severe end of the
Mm.
condition.
Mm.
He is not able to walk. He's not able to talk. He uses a feeding tube, and he has tremendous challenges with seizures.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's rough.
Yeah. He was the happiest kid you ever met when he was a little kid. And he would give anybody a hug, and he would just hug you and hold you. He was a really, really great little kid. As he got older, it became a lot more challenging for sure.
Sure, sure,
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. All right. I was going to ask you later what was the most challenging thing that happened to you in your life, and I think I just found out.
Yeah, I know. I think that would be it. When he was born, something was clearly wrong. We actually knew before he was born something was clearly wrong, but we didn't know what it was.
Hmm.
It took us a number of years to figure out his exact diagnosis because it was so rare.
Hmm.
He was originally diagnosed with cerebral palsy,
Mm.
which didn't quite fit him, but we didn't know any better, and it got us the services that we were looking for. But thankfully, we eventually figured it out,
Hmm.
and there's now a pretty amazing community worldwide of families that have these kids.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was quite a journey.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mm.
Uh,
So,
my this is a photo actually of my father on Mount Fuji. He and I climbed this as well.
Okay.
And this is kind of funny. This is I believe, a Chinese couple that came up to him and asked him to have their photo taken with them because they had never seen anybody with a white beard before. Yeah.
So how many major mountaintops do you have in your uh, history?
That's a good question, Randy. I'm not sure that I've ever
Okay.
calculated. Do you think I'd have a spreadsheet for that?
Yeah.
Um, my dad kept track of it. I know for sure in Canada that I've climbed probably about 50 mountains
Okay.
in the Canadian Rockies,
Wow.
and then some other ones like,
Right.
Kilimanjaro and Mount Fuji and others like that. I did attempt the highest mountain in the Americas, Aconcagua in Argentina.
Mm.
Unfortunately, I was sick on that trip and never recovered. And so when I got to base camp after a 3-day hike, I decided that I wasn't getting any better, and I ended up taking a helicopter out of base camp and going back.
Wow.
Um, one of the best helicopter rides of my life, by the way. But yeah, wasn't successful in climbing that mountain. So yeah, my dad passed away with leukemia in 2013, and one of his final things that he did was put a book together, kind of the story of his life.
Mm-hmm.
And this is him sitting on a mountain in Canada. And so that was very much who he was, and I think it was for me as well.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and by the way, if anybody's look out there is looking to give an amazing gift to their family, write a story about your life. It's an incredible book that he gave us. Um, I have a copy of it here. It's this hard copy book. It's about, I don't know, 150 pages or something.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's just full of photos and stories about his life. It's an amazing thing that he gave us.
Very cool. Very cool.
Well, and then from there, my dad was lucky enough to meet my wife.
Aha.
Um, I tell people that he fell in love with her probably quicker than I did, which was something. So I'm glad he got to meet her before he passed. But the story I tell about my wife is that I went to Brazil and I was in the rainforest and I saw her wandering in the jungle with her face painted. And I decided that this was the person for me. That's actually not a true story, but my wife thinks that's a funny story. Um, yeah, we actually met online. This was her online profile photo.
That's a pretty good photo to. You were
Pretty
flipping through the
eye-catching.
photos, and
That's right. So yeah, I was the first person to reach out to her.
uh-huh.
So that tells you how desperate she was to find a man. And the rest is history.
And the rest is history.
She was a comedian in Brazil.
Yeah,
And her last show, she played 7 different characters. These are all her on this card here. The show was about the 7 deadly sins, and each character was one of the deadly sins.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
And so she was making a living as a comedian,
She was trying to.
trying to make a living. Okay.
Yes.
I guess that's true for many, many stand-up comedians.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a tough job. Her last show, I think she played in a theater in Sao Paulo to a crowd of about 600 people.
Oh,
So
that's quite
she
successful.
was starting to hit her stride.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And then I came along and interrupted the whole thing. She's a very adventurous woman, although her idea of adventure is more like this.
I see. I see. She's not like into mountain climbing or running 20 or 30 miles at a time.
Not quite like that, but she, to her credit, she has had some pretty great experiences. This is in Tasmania with the wombat.
It's okay.
So she was quite comfortable being close to this wild animal, a little bit less comfortable being close to this wild animal,
Yeah.
which is a caiman in Brazil. Apparently, if you sneak up behind them, you can get pretty close.
Hmm.
Just don't approach them from the side or the front.
I see. I got it.
They have a
I'll
blind
remember
spot
that. I'll
apparently
remember
for,
that next time I'm there.
yeah.
Yeah.
Now on this trip, this is also a Brazilian thing. You put a snake around your neck. And so this is how it's done, Randy. But when my wife did it, this is what happened. The snake crawled up on top of her head. Now, maybe she used some shampoo or something that the snake really liked the flavor of. Yeah. So that was quite an experience for her there.
I got it.
And here's a photo without a snake on her head.
Well, okay. So but you skipped over the part that would have been another similarity in our lives. Of course, I spent my entire adult life in the bicycle business,
Hmm.
although I was never a racer, never a significant rider. I mean, I rode, back and forth to school and back and forth to my girlfriend's house and back and forth to this and that. But I did spend my whole life in the cycling industry. And you then, as part of your sports career, you spent some time cycling. So what were you working on?
Yeah, for me, that was just more fun. By the time I found cycling, I was done with running and I was pretty much done with mountain climbing. And cycling was just a great way to, spend time outside and stay in shape.
Hmm.
And I was living in Cincinnati at the time, and I had a lot of friends that enjoyed cycling. And Cincinnati actually is a great place to ride a bike. So I was really just doing that more for fun.
Okay, all right.
But
But
then, of course, I
you look pretty
decided that
serious.
riding up mountains
You
would
you
be
you
fun too.
you look pretty serious because you were wearing Lycra spandex, and for a person to wear Lycra spandex, they have to be pretty serious about their sport.
True, although if you do any amount of cycling and if you don't wear that, you're going to be in trouble. So you discover very quickly the importance of wearing spandex, whether you want to or not.
Okay, so I'm sorry I interrupted you. You decided you would combine two of your sports, and so you started using your bicycle to go up mountains.
Yeah, one of the fun things I do enjoy doing, I don't know why, again, I can't explain this to you, but I love riding my bike up mountains, particularly volcanoes in Hawaii. It's been one of my favorite things to do. I've ridden up three of them in Hawaii. Um, there was one road up a volcano in Hawaii to a prison
Mm.
that when we were going up, there was signs that said, don't go past this point. But, I wanted to get to the top. And so we did. So we ended up meeting the prison warden,
I bet you did.
right? And she had a little friendly conversation with us. But the good news is she gave us her business card. And if we ever want to go back there, we need to call her first,
I see. All right.
give her some advance notice. So we left on friendly terms.
That's good. That's good. So, famously in Los Angeles, we have this, I forget, 20 degree or 22 degree, I forget what it's called now. Over in San Fernando, the San Fernando Pass off the 405, I think it is. And I want to say the road is one of the steepest,
Hmm.
in the country or something. And there's this race every year. Have you ever uh, participated in any of those kind of uphill races?
I did an uphill running race one time.
Okay, all right.
When I first moved to Cincinnati, it's a road called Straight Street, and it goes up to a hospital, which is good because people needed the services by the time they got to the top. The first year I did it, actually the first and only time I did it, I won the race.
Okay.
And that was really enjoyable because nobody knew who I was. And so nobody expected me to beat them, right? And I had a few races like that when I first showed up in Cincinnati because no one knew who this guy was.
Right.
My prize for winning that race, I think, was a six-pack of beer.
I see. Okay. There you go.
So that was good. And cycling, I'm not particularly interested in riding up steep hills.
Mm-hmm.
That's less interesting to me than riding up high
Mm-hmm.
mountains.
Gotcha. Gotcha. All
Yeah,
right. Okay. And you say you continue that particular sport to this day.
I do. Yeah, I rode my bike this morning. Now, where I live in Florida, there aren't so many hills.
Hmm.
An overpass qualifies as a hill around here.
That's good. I like it. So I'll give you a challenge because you like to do long distance and you're not a cyclist. I walked into a bike shop. I want to say this was about 12 years ago. And one of the hottest days of I've in Orange County, I think I've ever seen, because Orange County tends to be a little cooler, but I think it was well into the 90s. And in walks this guy that looked like he was older than me now, well older than me now. In fact, he turned out he was well older than me now. His deal was that on his birthday every year he wrote his age.
Mm.
And so because it was his birthday, the weather did not hold him back. And so on his 91st birthday,
Wow.
in the 90s, he was doing 91 miles. So there you go, sir.
That's a challenge that just gets harder and harder every year. That's impressive.
I was pretty impressed. All right, so that kind of wraps up the sports life. It kind of wraps up the what do you want to call it? Gives kind of the overview. The thing that you left out was your children currently. You have a couple of young people in your life right now. So talk to me about, because everybody always wants to know about somebody's kids.
Yeah, I have 4 children. So 2 from my first marriage and 2 from my second.
Mhm.
Boy and a girl, boy and a girl.
Mm,
So the oldest ones are 25, and my oldest daughter just turned 23.
okay. Mhm.
She's going to be going to graduate school in California come August. So she's doing really well. And then I've got 2 younger ones. My son is 9 and my daughter's 7. And this second set of kids has been very different and in some ways a lot more fun because as a parent now, there were no mysteries about what was going to happen.
Right.
Right. And I'd been through a pretty challenging time as a parent with the first 2 kids,
Yes.
particularly the son. My oldest daughter was great, but just that as a parenting experience, that was very challenging.
Right.
And I would say the second time around, knowing exactly what's to come has just made it so much more enjoyable. Right. In some ways, I kind of joke that it's almost like, I'm a grandparent and I'm enjoying my grandkids, but I'm not that old yet, Randy. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so I had my 2 biological children. I have 2 adopted, actually legally adopted children. And I have 2 kids biologically. And the last, like you, they were had those at an advanced age. But when I had the last one, I think, how old was I? I was old. But my concern was, I said, I was afraid that when he got to be 11 or 12, I would say, go deep. And I would say, no, not that deep. So have there been any challenges being a man in your 50s with these young people?
So far, so good.
Okay, all right.
But I'm sure once they become teenagers, the challenges will only increase because they'll be getting that much better, and I'll be declining that much faster. But yeah, so far so good, Randy.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
I guess I figured it out. I was 58 when my youngest was born, so I think I eclipsed you on that. Is that right? That can't be right. 48. 48, right? Yeah, 48 with my youngest was born. So that's pretty close.
Okay. Pretty close.
Yeah, pretty close. Okay, all right. So that then gives us, again, that overview I was just talking about. We've wrapped up the overview. So let's end chapter 2 here. We'll go on to chapter 3, which for some people will be the most interesting because some people probably could care less. No, I'm kidding. But we'll go into the career side. We'll get into, the challenges that you had in the career, any kinds of stuff that you saw along the way, and then, how you got to where you are and why you do what you do now. So let's end chapter 2, and thank you, sir. Cern Basher said that it was okay that the first 2 parts of this series on his life didn't turn him into a sniveling and shivering. Anyway, everybody's always worried about this stuff, Cern. Was it hard? Was it difficult? Was it?
Not really, although I would say that I'm not that comfortable really talking about myself. It's not something I spend a lot of time doing. My job as an advisor is squarely focused on others.
Yes, yes.
And that's more comfortable for me.
Okay, all right.
But it wasn't so bad.
Well, and like your dad, no matter what you decide to do in terms of writing a book, you now have at least these 3 pieces of work that you could keep in your archives, and your kids could say, well, there it is. I've got at least this part of it. CERN, you somewhere along the line. Oh, well, okay, we can go all the way back. And by the way, people may want to go back and look at part one and part two because they were fascinating, talking about his years in mountaineering, in cycling, in running, in the school years, the young years with the kids, all the rest. You've had. Would you agree that you've had a pretty darn interesting life?
Oh, it's been fantastic. I've traveled a ton. I've gone to so many different places in the world and done so many cool things. I've been very fortunate in that regard. Yeah.
All right. So we learned in part one that you were coming out of college, you were studying finance, and you had a teacher or professor who kind of gave you the right push at exactly the right time to send you off into the world of stocks and bonds and options and all the rest. Can you fill in a little more of the details of that transition?
Yeah, well, Dr. Robert Brooks was his name, and he was instrumental, I think, in sort of opening my eyes to the possibilities. And as I mentioned that I took a graduate level finance course, and I really enjoyed learning everything I learned in that course. I still have the textbook to this day. Um, and I would also say that too, I think that that was probably the genesis of my love of spreadsheets, believe it or not,
Okay.
Randy. And so here actually is the oldest spreadsheet that I have that I developed. There's my wife again.
That's it? I'm sorry.
Yeah, right. I built the Black-Scholes option valuation model in a spreadsheet so that I could learn it and understand it.
Huh.
And this is just a screenshot of one of the pages, but behind this is all the calculations necessary to calculate the value of a call option in
Wow.
red there, the $1.95, given all the different assumptions.
Wow. How about,
This spreadsheet is probably getting close to 30 years old.
and you still use it?
Maybe older, actually. No, I haven't used this in a long time.
Okay. All right.
No.
That's nice. That's great.
But it was the tool that sort of helped me understand how option pricing works from
Right.
a true fundamental level because I built the spreadsheet to calculate it.
Right.
So I have this kind of intuitive understanding of how that works, and that for me was important.
Yeah.
But yeah, to this day, 30 some years later, I still enjoy spreadsheets.
Nice. I like it. I like it a lot. I, by the way, also like spreadsheets. For me, it's a much narrower thing, though. Everybody has the things that they maybe have just a special capability. I can look at a P&L like other people look at a piece of art.
Mm.
I can look at a P&L and it materializes. It becomes a living thing. I can like immediately go and see where the problems are, where the issues are, where things could improve. It's really been fun doing that over the years for clients because I did that this last third of my life. I was a marketing consultant, but it also got into the spreadsheet because I believe everything's marketing, including the P&L. Okay, so
Sure.
all
Yeah.
right. All right, so you start your love of spreadsheets. You're now in your 20s, I assume, mid-20s.
Yeah, and so I left college and moved back to Calgary, Canada.
Okay.
And having been gone there for 3 years, I really wasn't plugged into anybody there. And so what I decided to do was I went to the local regulator in Canada. Each province has its own securities regulation
Mm-hmm.
department. So
Hmm.
here we have the SEC.
Hmm.
In Canada, it's each province has their own one. So I went to what's called the Alberta Securities Commission. And I basically said, I said, I would like to volunteer. I would like to learn what you guys do. And they were so impressed and so taken aback. They said, we can't do that, but we can pay you. So, so I said, sure, if you have to, I'll take your money.
So you're a born
Uh,
salesman too.
but apparently, yeah. And so I spent time sort of learning the ins and outs of some of the securities regulation, and that was an interesting experience to work for the regulator. And they made the mistake of paying me by the hour.
Hmm.
And so I worked a lot of hours, right? But they were very happy with me because I actually probably ended up helping them make a whole bunch of money.
Wow.
We caught a number of securities violations while I was there, and it was from the research that I'd done. So that was a pretty cool experience. I'm
Yeah.
glad that I didn't make a career out of that. That would have been a bit mind-numbing for me, but it was a good place to start.
So and it also became a great thing for your resume.
It was good. Yep. From there, I made the jump to Exxon's Canadian division. It's
Hmm.
called Imperial Oil,
Because of
and
course,
I
what
went
else would you do in Calgary?
exactly. Yeah, the head of the group was a runner, and so he liked to recruit runners. And by the way, we went to the U.S. Corporate Track and Field Championships one year, and I am part of a corporate world record holding team.
There you go.
So there were some benefits, yeah. But I worked in the natural gas marketing group for a
Okay.
while. And again, my love of spreadsheets served me well because we built spreadsheet models for all of the different wellheads and factoring in the pipeline costs to ship gas to different markets.
Hmm.
And so that was a lot of fun. I really sort of honed my spreadsheet skills doing that. We had some really complicated spreadsheets in those days because natural gas is priced at all kinds of different points all around North America.
Yeah.
And you've got to factor in the cost of shipping the gas to different places and all that. So we were trying to optimize all of that. And I was part of the group that was doing that. But I knew in my heart that I really wasn't that interested in oil and gas. And by the way, if you're not an engineer, it really limits your upward mobility in
Hmm.
that business.
Hmm.
And so that was just a stepping stone for me. And then I had the opportunity to move to the United States and move to Cincinnati. And then make a long story short, I ended up working for a bank there. And the amazing opportunity came about in 1995 when I started working there. Some other people on the team had left, and so I stepped into their shoes and started managing a bunch of mutual funds.
Oh, okay.
And that was in that period when the internet went crazy, and I was managing a large cap growth fund. And so I have an outstanding 5-year track record as a mutual fund manager.
Did you quit in 1999?
I left at the peak in 2000.
Come on, is that right?
Yeah. So that was good. And then from there, I left to start my own investment management firm, wealth management firm,
Oh, okay.
which is what I've been doing since.
Now,
So that was,
how does one make that transition? I mean,
mm,
how do you, since you were working in a bank, you might have had some customers of the bank, or did you partner up, or how did you make that transition?
yeah. So back in those days, the bank, like a lot of banks, custody their own client assets, and we had our own custody group.
Okay.
That wasn't the most efficient, and the tech that they had wasn't that great. So the bank started a little process to see if there are other alternatives, and I was on that team, and there was another guy from the private bank on the team, and he and I basically determined that Charles Schwab was in that business, and Charles Schwab actually would be likely a good partner for us.
Hmm.
We presented our ideas to bank management. They promptly threw our report away and said, "No, we're going to keep our custody group. Thank you very much, for your time." And we said, "Well, thank you very much. We now know what we can do." And so we left the bank, started our own firm, and custody with Charles Schwab.
Oh, I see. Okay. All
So
right.
it was a little education for us as well that paid off.
Right, right, right. So is this something where you needed Charles Schwab to say yes, or is this something which is just like you can automatically do it?
Yeah, Charles Schwab's in the business of providing services to independent advisors, and there were other firms at the time as well that did that.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, we weren't particularly worried about, whether Schwab would accept us or not.
Mhm.
That was basically the business that they were in that at that time, in addition to being in the retail business, which they still are today.
Right, right, right. So
Yeah.
then, okay, you're a fledgling wealth management company. Now you need clients. So was one of you a salesman?
The guy from the private bank was the sales guy,
Okay,
and I was focused on doing the research and managing the portfolios.
I got it. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So
But, we experienced the downside of the dot-com bust,
yeah,
right? And so for the first, 2, 3 years of that business, it was a pretty brutal market. The market dropped 50% at one point.
yeah.
So tough time to be starting a business. It really forced us to figure out how we were going to add value to our clients.
Mhm.
Um, and we kind of morphed from being an investment management shop to being more of a wealth management shop, looking at client situation more holistically, which is appropriate anyway. And so that was a good thing that was necessary in order for us to survive.
So if I understand you right, then as opposed to trying to convince somebody that you could do a great job of managing their money this week or this month or this year, you wanted to convince them that for their lifetime, they should hang out with you because you would put together something that made sense for a lifetime.
Yeah, I think that's the gist of it, Randy. I think it's looking at things just, what are the tax impacts? What are the client's goals and where are they trying to get to? And then so how do we build a portfolio to get there? It's not like, oh, we have one portfolio and everybody should be in this.
Right.
It's more customizing
Okay.
the approach for our clients' needs.
So was that a common way for investment managers to work back then? Because we have a lot of companies that do that now, but I was wondering, was that kind of a new idea back when you were doing it?
Those 25 years ago, that was a fairly new idea. There were certainly many firms that were doing it. And so it wasn't a brand new idea, but the industry really hadn't moved that way in any serious amount yet.
Mhm.
And so I think there were a lot of people like us that were leaving brokerage firms, leaving banks
Mhm.
to start independent investment advisory businesses.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. And so what would you say you learned in that 3 years? I mean, and again, he was the salesman, you were the research guy, but then who was the business brains? Who was the one that was kind of deciding the direction for the business or which clients to go after, where to find them, et cetera? Who was doing that part?
Yeah, I think we both shared that responsibility. Um, I think we both, I mean, certainly from the financial aspect, I was, mapping out our business and doing the projections and that and so on. So, we had discussions about that together in terms of where we wanted to take our business.
Mhm.
Um, but certainly from a attracting client aspect, my business partner at the time was solely focused on that.
Mhm.
Um, but then, the market turned
Mhm. As
kind of
that,
on the
as it
bottom,
will, as it will.
as it always will, always does, always has. Yeah. And then we enjoyed a number of great years until we hit the financial crisis. And for me, that was probably the scariest time I've had in this business.
Interesting.
And let me just share it with you, just take you back. You may remember this. Um, I saved a number of the Wall Street Journal cover pages, and these are digital versions
Yeah.
of them.
Yeah.
Here we are, September 8th, 2008. You wake up in the morning and to a headline that says U.S. seizes mortgage giants. Government oust CEOs of Fannie Mae, Freddie promises up to 200 billion in capital. Right, and and there were some cracks in the system before this.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Right, this wasn't the first thing, but this is where we really started to roll.
Right. Right.
Okay, that was September 8th, and then the next here's September 15th. Crisis on Wall Street as Lehman totters. Merrill Lynch is sold. AIG seeks to raise cash. Okay.
Yep.
And
Remember
then
him
here we
well.
are on the 16th. AIG Lehman shock hits world markets. AIG faces cash crisis as stock dives 61%.
Yeah.
Right. US to take over AIG, an $85 billion bailout. Central bank injects cash as credit dries up. Like the whole system was seizing. This
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
September
Yeah. Oh,
17th.
yeah.
September 24th, Warren Buffett to invest $5 billion in Goldman Sachs to keep them afloat.
Yeah.
Okay. Washington Mutual was seized. This is September 26th, sold up to JP Morgan. Largest failure in US banking history. Okay. Washington Mutual stock down
Yep.
95%.
Yep. Yep.
And then, continues October 11th, wild day, Cap's worst week ever for stocks. Like this crisis went on and on and on and on. And for a good 6 months, we weren't sure if the financial system was going to survive.
Absolutely. 100%.
Right. And so this was different for me than the internet bubble, which was really focused on sort of one sector of the economy. This was more foundational.
Oh yeah.
Certainly it was the financials, but it affected everything. And so this was a scary time. And this was another period where the stock market essentially dropped 50% for a period of time.
Yeah. Actually, a little more, right? A little more
Maybe a
than,
little bit more.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, and then the US to buy stakes, the nation's largest banks. And then you can see here, big days. The Dow was up, 11% on October 13th, right? And then here's October 16th. Economic fears reignite market slump. So we had good days, we had bad days, much like we often see in Tesla stock today,
Sure, sure.
right? Some of the best days follow some of the worst days. It
Of
was the
course.
same thing back then for the entire stock market.
Yep, yep.
Okay, so anyway, and then this is kind of funny. Greenspan admits errors to hostile House panel. Yeah, you think?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like not not following George Bush's the president's 7 efforts uh, before Congress to try to get them to stop doing the derivative nonsense. Okay, so that was a very interesting time for you. So this partner was still with you at that time?
Yeah, I ended up leaving that firm in essentially 2015
Oh,
to start the firm that I'm at now.
uh-huh.
The firm that I initially started got pretty big. We had a lot of employees, and I found that I was spending really all my time in internal meetings
Mm,
and less focused on doing research,
mhm,
and certainly not much time with clients. And I really enjoy doing the research, and I enjoy working with clients directly.
mhm, mhm.
And so I saw an opportunity to use some of the new technologies that had come out in that time period and build a firm that was very small but yet very capable. And so I left the firm that I co-founded with one other person to start another firm.
Okay.
And that's where we are today. And started that firm about 9 years ago. And it's just the two of us, and we have a very lean operation. And I get to spend all my time doing the research and the investment management and working directly with clients. And those are the two things that I love.
Right, 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 right. Well, let's go back though to 2008 because I mean that's a super interesting thing, as you point out. Probably the hardest business time that you ever had to spend. And I had already sold my business just before that. Unfortunately, when the crisis was already obvious to the business world in 2007, so I got about, oh, I don't know, 20% of the value that I should have gotten for the company, which kind of messed up my entire financial life. But anyway, that's my story, not yours. So you're sitting there in 2008, or 2000, late 2007, all the way into 2008. Clients are on the phone, probably screaming and yelling and going crazy because housing prices were also falling 50% and more, 60, 70% in some cases because they were way overinflated. So what was that like in terms of deal? You love working with clients, so what was it like working with clients in those scary days?
Well, very challenging. Um, as you can imagine, in a time of crisis, you're not only dealing with the crisis and dealing with the fact that portfolios have lost, maybe half of their value in some cases, if it's an all equity portfolio. But you're also dealing with then kind of the psychological and the emotional aspects of all this. And even when this crisis was over, no one rang a bell in March of 2009 saying the market had bottomed. I sort of felt like for years and years afterwards, people still had the mindset that that could come back at any time. And so that crisis was with us for a long time to come, even though it bottomed in March of 2009. Um, I would say all the way through, 2013, 2014, I think people were still pretty worried about something happening.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There was a lot of talk that for the next 5 or 10 years that some people that have been burned during that time might never come back into the market.
Yeah.
I suspect most have, but I could certainly understand where people would have been like, I mean, yeah. Anyway, so you're doing a lot of hand holding, getting these people, probably a lot of people quitting or going on to other firms, or did you have much loss?
We didn't have a whole lot of loss with clients. We had some, obviously you always have some. But I think we were always very careful with clients to make sure they understood, what they were in for and how the portfolio was going to behave.
Mhm.
Um, the challenge you have sometimes is when people maybe are doing other things on the side that may be amplifying their situation,
Sure.
and in a time of crisis, that's not so helpful.
Right.
Like I remember, for example, going back to the internet boom, we had a portfolio of growth stocks for one client, and we were thinking that that was just a small part of his portfolio. Well, unbeknownst to us, he invested everything else in the same stuff that we were buying for him.
See,
Right. And so when those stocks experienced some volatility, then his whole portfolio dropped a lot. So those situations, I think, were tough. And that also made it very clear that we needed to be more of a wealth manager and make sure we saw the whole picture rather than just a part of the picture for some clients.
sure, 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 sure.
Right. So that we were aware of the total risk that our clients were facing. Um, but yeah, there were so many lessons in that crisis, and it was just such a great experience. But it's a reminder that things can go sideways pretty quickly and in a pretty major way. And so you always kind of have to keep one eye open for, big issues like that. Hopefully we don't see that again in our lifetimes, but
Yeah,
the
so
nature
the
of humanity is that we're going to have some challenges.
yeah, so like Bush, I saw the derivative thing coming. Not because I was that smart. I heard an article one day on the radio about the derivatives, explaining how they worked,
Yeah.
where they were, and how they were basically unmanageable and impossible to place value on them. And I wasn't necessarily any financial genius. I knew how to run businesses and whatnot. But I'm listening to that whole story. I went, this is really a bad idea. I mean, it's just like it was like immediate. I'm like, this is not smart.
Yeah.
And so I think other smart people probably saw it coming, but they were making so much money that they were unwilling to get away from the feeding trough in order to ring the bell. That probably the only other time that that kind of alarm bell's been going off in my head has been basically for 5 years with regard to the deficit and with regard to the amount of debt that there is both consumer, real estate, corporate, and federal, but especially federal. I'm just thrilled that we have a president that seems to have stepped up, unlike who's able to not only step up and attack it, but that the Congress seems to be going along with him. So maybe we're going to be able to avert the kind of crisis that we had in 2008.
Well, I really hope so. I mean, I think that politicians on both sides for years and years and years have talked about government overspending. Right. And there's video footage of, of Obama appointing Biden to basically do a Doge type thing. Right. And so if we're really truly going through this process now, and I hope we are, and I hope that they continue to make progress,
Mhm.
it's needed because if the US government finds itself in some kind of debt crisis, then it's going to be really bad. The thing that I worry about is this deflation that we're going to see from AI and from robotics,
Mhm.
this technology induced deflation, which on the surface of it is really good for everybody because it'll make the cost of everything cheaper. But for debt holders, it's terrible because now you're forced to pay back the debt with deflated dollars.
Right.
And so what I worry about is that then the only way out of it for the government is to just print money
Money. Mhm.
and debase the currency. So maybe it's not so much a debt problem, although if you own the debt,
Yeah.
you you're going to receive your money back, but it's going to be with money it's not worth a whole lot. We're just in, I think, for some interesting times because we're going to have some cross currents of some of these big things hitting at the same time.
Mhm. Yep, I think you're right. All right, let's wrap it up with the most obvious thing that we would want to wrap it up with, and that was the day that you found a Tesla in your life, or that you found that you wanted a Tesla, or that you became aware of Tesla. How did your story unfold?
Yeah. I wish the story could be better than it is. I had a client when Tesla went public. He was a guy who lived in the US, but he worked for a German company. He was an engineer, really smart guy. Um, and he liked to build his own electric vehicles.
Mm.
And he heard about Tesla, I heard about Elon Musk, and he wanted to invest in the IPO, which we did. And early on for Tesla, it was rough,
Yeah, yeah,
right? And I didn't really pay that much attention to the company. I thought this client was kind of crazy to invest in Tesla. He said he was crazy to invest in Tesla. He expected to lose all his money, right? But he liked the idea of electric vehicles so much. He's like, I don't care. I want to support this company. And so then for years, I kind of didn't really focus on Tesla a whole lot. I mean, I was aware the client had it, and we monitored it and so on, but I wasn't studying the company in any serious way. And so it wasn't really until things really started to get going for Tesla did I come back to it and revisited it. But I had the opportunity to follow a company, right from the beginning, and I didn't.
right,
Now, I don't fault myself too much because everybody expected Tesla to fail,
right, including
and they
Elon.
should have. They should have failed, right? But that said, after the dot-com bust and after Amazon went down as much as it did, I think it was down like 97% at one point.
Right.
I always sort of promised myself that if I ever found another company that I thought had such long-term potential,
Hmm.
like an Amazon did,
Hmm.
that I would stick with it. I would follow the company. I would understand it deeply, and I would have the courage of my conviction to act.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so when I finally really dug into Tesla again, that's exactly what I found in looking at the company. And so it's become, a pretty major focus for me. It's not the only company I follow
Sure,
closely,
sure.
but it's certainly one with the most interesting community of people. I can't name any other company with perhaps maybe strategy, MicroStrategy, starting to become a close second with a community of people that are so passionate about the
Right,
company
right,
that they'll almost fight to the death to defend it,
right.
right? And that's pretty unique. It doesn't happen very often.
No.
It happened a little bit with Apple. I think
Sure.
some people were excited about their products,
Hmm.
but with Tesla, it's about all aspects of this company,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? There are people that are experts on the energy side, people experts on the auto side, AI, all the different aspects. And it's such an amazing community to be a part of because I feel like we're this one big global research team, all working together to understand this company more deeply.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And I've never had more fun than this. This has been an incredible experience, right?
yeah.
And hopefully, we all make a lot of money doing this, but it's just been fun, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. I claim that this two and a half years that I've been doing this channel and the year or so that it took us to write the book, actually two books, 3 years. I guess it's been 3 years on those two books. Has been the best job I've ever had. And I've had some pretty fun jobs over the years. And when I call them jobs, companies that I've owned, this one is by far the most fun and interesting. So when did you finally get really super interested and start doing your deep dive?
That's a good question. It kind of evolved over time and ended up taking more and more of my time. The thing that really took off for me was when I made a post about Robotaxi, and James Dalma reposted it, made some comments, and Elon responded to James. And Elon said something like, "You understand, but few do." And I took that as an indirect compliment to me,
Yeah, no kidding.
right? Because I wrote the post that James
Yes,
was
yes.
commenting on. And that's when something clicked for me, and I said, "Okay, I'm onto something here. If Elon is saying that, hey, these guys get it,
Yes, yes.
maybe I should continue to look at this." And then I did some work on the humanoid robot side,
Yeah, yeah.
and that post got a similar kind of response. I don't think Elon responded to it, but it's just gotten more interesting since then. Yeah.
All right. And of course, since you're on my show at least once and sometimes twice a week, I know, and my most of the folks who are watching right now kind of know your sense or your feelings about, the different aspects, the energy, all the different places and all the work that you've done, all the deep dives that you've taken. In fact, I think our next deep dive is going to be which may have been already this is probably after that. But we wanted to really go into this robotaxi rollout and what that's going to look like, because I think, well, it's probably going to be the most important week or so in Tesla's entire history.
Yeah, and I think it'll be quite indicative, actually, of what's to come. Because if you think about it, if they can conquer Austin, so to speak,
Right.
then it's copy paste in every city in America
Yeah. And beyond.
and beyond. Right. And so what happens in Austin will certainly be very indicative of what could happen everywhere else. Now, my expectations for Austin are that things may happen a little slower there at first,
Mhm.
right? The next city should be an easier expansion than the first one, right? And then the next two more cities will be easier than the first two. It's going to keep getting easier and easier as they move on.
So the interesting thing is about Austin, though, is that Austin has a built-in customer base
Yeah.
of all the employees, families, the
Yeah.
suppliers to the company, people that are, you know, fanboys because he's there, because it's become kind of, you know, the biggest story in town. So it would seem like getting that first, 20,000 people to ride the vehicles is going to be a slam dunk, where they won't necessarily have that opportunity. Well, if they do Fremont or something like that, they would have that same
Mhm.
opportunity. But if they try to go to, I don't know, Arlington or to Georgia, Atlanta or something like that, they wouldn't have that same base.
Yeah, I think by then there's going to be such a buzz about it
Yeah, probably.
that that's not really going to be so much of an issue. Um, I always come back to this. The economics of it are so compelling.
Yes.
And and when you talk to people about Uber, are they raving fans about Uber? Not really.
Right.
Like we use it, maybe it's better than a taxi service or whatever. Cars are a little cleaner, but there's plenty of issues with Uber. And a lot of people say, "Oh, I'm freaked out by the drivers. I want to be in a driverless car."
Right. Yes.
Right? A lot of women say that.
Right.
Right? They feel safer not having a
100%.
driver.
100%. Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And so I think it may surprise us how quickly people adopt this. I think people are ready. We're used to technology. We're used to having an app on our phone.
Hmm.
I think that the uptake actually could be surprisingly strong. Now, the thing I worry about is just like little hiccups here and there in the system, with FSD. I think FSD is highly capable. The version that they're going to roll out for this, I'm sure, will be incredible. But you can bet if there's any incident, any accident, any death, the media is going to blow it out of proportion.
Yeah. 100%.
Right. So that always has the risk of kind of throwing things off track for a little bit.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, but that said, the economics are so compelling for this that's in the end, that's what will drive it.
Yeah. So, Cern, that brings us up to date on your life, which only leaves one obvious concluding question, and that would be, what's next? I mean, you got kids that are going to graduate from high school, go to college, all that, the normal kind of stuff that happens in the human life. But you've climbed Mount Fuji. You've built two beautiful companies. You've got an incredible family. Is there something left that someday you want to pursue that is kind of niggling in your brain right now?
I would say right now I'm doing all the things that I absolutely love. And I feel like after being in this business now for 30 years, just kind of getting the hang of it.
It's
Right. I'm still learning.
very complex.
It's very complex. I hope, like Warren Buffett, I hope that I have another, 30, 40, 50 years in this business. That would be cool.
Right.
Right. Um, I just want to continue to do what I love, and that this is it.
Mhm, mhm.
In terms of other things, I love to travel and do different things and the family and so on. I love spending time with my two younger kids. That we're really enjoying them because I know with the first two kids how quickly that whole period went. And so I'm finding myself now really trying to soak up the time that I have with them.
Mhm, mhm.
We're all planning on going to Austin sometime in June to check out the robotaxis. So that'll be a fun family trip. My kids are completely indoctrinated into Tesla. My son was wearing a Cybertruck shirt this morning, and so on. So that's been a lot of fun. The whole family's kind of become involved in this now.
Of course, that's great. I love it. All right, that's all the questions I've got. It would be unfair though not to let you have the last word. Is there something that I missed? Something that was so compelling about your life story that I should have known or couldn't have known, or that you'd like to leave us with?
There was a time in Barcelona. No, just kidding. No, I think you covered it all, Randy.
Well, good. I'm glad I'm glad that we found a way to do it. And I appreciate the fact that as it wouldn't have been a CERN basher video if we hadn't had some actual spreadsheets and some pictures. So CERN, as always, it's great to have you on, and thank you for doing this. And I hope everybody enjoyed it. And I guess at this point, I'm just going to say it's been great talking to you.
And back to regular programming next time.